One of the more controversial questions asked by most Bible readers is, why did God accept Abel's sacrifice and rejected Cain's? Is God a steak lover? Does God hate vegetables or plants? Does he prefer meat? Is he a carnivore? Is it what is being sacrificed? Or is it who is sacrificing? Our psalm today tells us that God accepts all those sacrifices that are sincere, comes from the heart, and freely given and focused on God. And it's worth asking ourselves, was Abel doing that? Did Cain fulfill that? With Abel, of course, we can see yes, because he is someone who is consistently focused himself on God. But what about Cain? Cain was full of anger. If you are giving someone a gift, you give it to that person because you want that person to be happy. And when you give something that the person doesn't like, that love should drive you to look for what that person desires. And the fact that when God rejected Cain, he did not ask this question, but rather took it negatively and got angry at God. Why did God not accept my sacrifice? Why did my friend not accept my gift to him? Maybe he is allergic to the gift that you gave. But the point is, instead of asking why God would reject that, Cain rejected God. And when Abel was successful or triumphant in his sacrifice, instead of being happy, he was envious. And it consumed him. And again, in both reasons, we can see that Cain was not focused on God, but focused on himself. And it goes consistent with what Jesus has been consistently teaching about the Pharisees, wherein they might be doing what's right. They might be sacrificing. They might be doing things that God asked. And yet their sacrifice may still be rejected because they are not focused on God. They are not focused on His people, but rather themselves. Brothers and sisters, I pray that we are all striving to live a life that God asks of us. But I also pray that by doing so, our hearts are focused on God. Our love is focused on God, and not for selfishness alone. When we do things just as Cain did, just so that we can have gratification, then it loses the meaning of what we are doing. And that is why God would reject it, because it doesn't mean anything. Ask yourself, why are you doing the things that you are doing? Especially as we approach Lent. I'm hoping you are all preparing and asking yourselves, what sacrifice would you do? What would you fast from? What would you abstain from? And those are all good. And I encourage you. And I pray that you will pray for me as I also try to do the same things for the season of Lent. But if those things are not focused on God, they are empty. And the story of Abel and Cain teaches us how important it is, the heart, when we give ourselves to God. More important, in fact, than the sacrifice itself. For God accepts the broken heart, but not a broken sacrifice. And we break our sacrifice when we do it out of selfishness and self-gratification.